Could have been worse.
He grabs it and runs out the door when it happens.
Worse.
I've had someone say, I don't know how to turn it off. We'll just keep going. Yep. Good evening. We're going to call this meeting of the Wastewater Treatment Facility Board of Management meeting to order. Time is 5:31. Item 2 is the approval of the agenda. The motion is that the agenda of the Wastewater Treatment Facility Board of Management meeting of January 18th be approved as presented. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Kirkby, Mayor Deschamps. All in favor? Carried. Any declarations of interest? No presentations, no delegations. 6 is minutes. 6.1 is a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on September 28th, 2023. Recommendation is that the Wastewater Treatment Facility Board of Management minutes dated September 28th, 2023 be accepted as presented. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Lockett, Councillor McConnell, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 7.1 is for information only, and we have Matthew Armstrong is going to speak to the 2023 year end.
So, an update from our previous meeting in September where we were taking a look at the 8 months up to the end of August. And so total flow, average daily flow was 3,438 cubic meters, which is 72.7% of the design capacity. So the total design capacity is 4,726 cubic meters per day. And then I just took a look at the last 5 years of daily flow, and it ranged between 2,700 and 3,600. So a little bit more on the higher end, but certainly well within that range where we would expect it to be. Town of Prescott accounted for 91%, and Edwards for Cardinal 8.81%, and then which is an average daily flow of 303. And then again, I took a look over the last 5 years to see what that range was, and it ranged between 201 and 333. 333 being the highest last year, with that fluctuation in who was connected and that sort of thing.
Excuse me, if I may. Did you happen to note what Edwardsburg Cardinals flow rate was as a proportion in those as we went through the years?
It's kind of been building over the last couple of years. Highest being last year, which was 9 point. It was right around about 9.5, I believe, and then this year it dropped back to 8.81. So second highest out of the last 6, but certainly kind of in that range.
Thank you.
And then, so when we take a look at our income statement, we only have 9 months of billing so far because Real St. Lawrence gives us our revenue 2 or 3 months behind. So just waiting on September, October, November, which we'll receive over the next couple of months. So to the end of September, we had earned or generated 816,000. Simply used the formula dividing it by 9, multiplying it by 12, and it puts us with almost bang on where we would expect for this year. When we take a look at the revenue share, and it's based on the calculation of expenses or insurable costs, then insurable costs went down by 72,000, but a slightly higher flow between the 8.81, which was the actual, versus the 8.5% that was used for budget. And so we expect the Edwardsburg Cardinal revenue share to be about $2,800 lower than budgeted. We take a look at the expenses, and thankfully we have the vast majority of expenses that have come through now. So we're able to have a pretty good feeling for where that's going to end up. Went through, noted in here, repairs and maintenance. We always, at the end of August, we just went back to budget, and each year Aqua provides us a pretty detailed listing of everything that we would do in the course of the year. Some of that is planned preventative maintenance, some of it's anticipated life cycle, and some of it is for unanticipated failures. So hopefully by the end of the year, it was $52,000 less than budget, but we did achieve all of those life cycle and preventative maintenance items. It was really came down to The unanticipated, thankfully didn't happen, but something that we can't bank on from year to year. So we're estimating a surplus of about 102,000. Again, there's some variability in that with the not knowing the last 3 months of revenue. And we budgeted a surplus of 44,000. In terms of the reserve, it increased fairly substantially in the course of this year. Remember back in 2018 or 2019, we put $1 million into the equity portfolio. It earned 247,000 last year due to favorable market conditions. And then with the estimated surplus of 102, also going in, so almost $350,000 of an increase. And then only 3,200 is coming out for the grease project. So grease holding and dewatering. So more than happy to answer any questions there might be, and we'll just go from there.
Councilor McConnell?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify something, Matthew, you said we had a budgeted surplus of roughly 44,000. And we had, and I'm not clear whether this is an unexpected surplus of 102. Is that on top of the 44 or is that including the 44?
That includes the 44. So the net difference being 58,000.
Thank you.
Your day, Sean.
Through you, your worship, to the CAO. Our 2023 budgeted total comes out to 98,718. Actual is 95,900. The usage is 8.81%. But the budgeted was 8.5%. Not sure that I understand. Shouldn't the year-to-date be higher if the usage is higher?
So higher, however, we did have a couple of adjustments. Obviously, the $52,000 in we didn't fully reach the budget for repairs and maintenance. So that's giving me a portion of that. Also, when I took a look at the amortization, when I was looking at it, I noticed that there was one $12,000 amortization amount that ended in 2022. So it doesn't affect or it doesn't carry over into 2023, and that's why you'll see the amortization expense drop from 363 to 350.
Okay. And if I can, one more.
Yep.
Chair, that's okay. I think I know the answer to this before I ask, but I'm going to ask anyway. Worthwhile noting. So at the bottom of page 5, it just says total expenses 2023 are estimated at 60,310 under budget, which is fantastic. The negative variance in natural gas ended up being close to the estimate in August. Noted the federal carbon tax accounts for 24% of the pre-tax charges, which is causing the increase in the over budgeted amount. I assume that line relates back to the natural gas. Yeah, and so 24% of that natural gas ended up being $2,340 over what the budgeted was.
Pretty much.
Carbon tax.
So yeah, not almost like for like in terms of usage, but carbon tax is really having a bigger effect than
Huge effect, eh? Yeah, for sure. I just think it's worthwhile noting that for the record, so that folks know, that is one of the big overages is the increase in the carbon tax, and it's going to get more as we go along as well. Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Just a question, Matthew. The liability portion of the wastewater is no longer split. Like, what does that actually mean?
So previously in our premiums, they had a specific line for water, wastewater, that sort of thing. When we went with the new company, they eliminated that particular line, and so I can't necessarily really differentiate what it could be, and it doesn't really affect us that much overall, considering that the vast majority of our savings was in the liability side, and but we did end up paying more in the property tax or in the property insurance side. So that's why you're seeing kind of a net result of it. Pretty good for the wastewater treatment.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You can call me deputy mayor, that's fine. I used to be. To the CAO again, so the 8.81 is better reflective of sort of where we were headed before last year's water increase. It was an anomaly last year, right? Because of the break or whatever.
Definitely. So I think we were running in that high sevens, low eights. Then we had last year, we jumped up to 9.5. Now we're back to 8.81. So, yeah, I think, for me, it's kind of between the two. It still seems, I think,
A little bit high,
a
eh?
little high.
Yeah, it's a little bit high.
But it's not something that we can necessarily diagnose at this point that it doesn't seem to be anything that's necessarily happening with the system or anything like that.
There's no new users or anything like that.
The Giant Tiger's been ramping up over the last few years, and so I think that was the biggest thing we've seen. It's just that addition of Giant Tiger.
Getting back to normal probably.
Well, not only that, but we had like nothing from Giant Tiger, and then they kind of came online, and then they've been adding and adding and adding. So where I'm sitting, that would be the one.
Thank you.
I don't know who to ask this question of, but maybe I'll just ask Mayor Deschamps. Do you guys project more usage in the future?
I think I'll look to our CAO to answer.
I would say with the potential new development happening, it would just be more domestic than process water. But I do anticipate that over time that we will be looking at some additional volume.
Okay. And forgive me for not knowing this. Do we have like a limit as to what that you guys are allowed?
Yep. So I believe you purchased 10%, and that's 10% of the 4,726. So 472 would be the 10%.
Oh, so you're well below it. You're
Only running
32, so almost 2/3, right? Okay, so that's good. Lots of room. Good. That's probably something no one knows or
You know.
didn't know. All right, anything else there, Matthew, on that one?
No.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
And this is, probably of Dave, I guess, but are you aware of any egress into our wastewater system from Edwards Group Cardinal? I know down here, we've been separating sewers, and so the ones that aren't separated, we get storm water going in. But is there any of the industries down there that you know of that would have an entrance to our sewer system that we don't know about, or is that worth checking into, or?
So certainly worth doing some further checking into. We have had portions of the mains cambered just to see what we have with respect to infiltration. We didn't pick up anything of significance. So we have been monitoring some of the industries a little closer with respect to additional wastewater that we may not be aware of.
Just because they're not supposed to have it doesn't mean it's not there. Yeah, no, that's great. If you're doing that, that's excellent, because it only saves you percentage-wise at the end of the day.
For sure, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to 7.2. The recommendation is that the wastewater treatment facility board of management approve the 2024 wastewater treatment plan budget as outlined in the report. Can I just get a mover and seconder for discussion? Councillor Kirkby, Mayor Deschamps. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So based on the 2023 estimate that we just talked about, we really use that as the basis for increases, things like that. So inflationary scenario was 3%. The things that we certainly knew about in terms of the aqua contract, then we put that in. Since our meeting in September, we did get an update on the repairs and maintenance budget. And so that's reflected in that number as well now. And kind of just working through the numbers. So when we took a look at this in September, we were estimating about $17,000 higher in expenses. And about or $20,000 higher in revenue. So there's still a little bit of variability in terms of the revenue, billing revenue, simply because we don't know the last 3 months. It's an assumption of 5% at July 31st is the increase. Even with a 5% increase, we're still projecting a deficit of just shy of 16,000. So to address that, my recommendation would be that we take the surplus, the unanticipated surplus that we had in 2023, apply that to 2024. And in the course of 2024, the company is required to go through a financial plan for our water and wastewater. And that will help inform the rates going forward. And we're required to go through that because our water license, our water taking license is due up in January of 2025. So a portion of that is a requirement to have the financial plan in place as well.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Deschamps?
Bottle of tequila for the third time. So going back into the unanticipated, basically due to most of it due to lower maintenance costs, which is again fantastic. What's the policy for
surplus dollar goes directly into the reserve fund.
Into the reserve fund. So and then it would be appropriate to use the reserve fund to offset any rate increase for this year?
Yes.
Okay. And so we're thinking that last year is a one-off, and that's why there's such a 5% rate increase, pretty solid rate increase. So we're anticipating that last year, more of that maintenance will have to be done this year. We're not going to realize any of those savings, and thus that'll equal.
No. So every year we always go back to what do we think is going to happen in the course of this year, and we put in amounts for unanticipated. Crap happens, valve goes, those things like that. Yep. So last year we didn't eat into those unanticipated, and when we don't this year again. So I would say the 204 or 205,000 is a conservative estimate. It's not that we're catching up from anything that we didn't do last year. It's the things that we didn't do last year didn't have to be done or didn't fail. And so therefore, it's not like we're rolling into this year. It's just, this is what's on the tap for this year.
That's included for this year. Yeah, okay. One more, if I may, Chair. So looking forward and looking at this, I know you're going to do the costing in July. Is there anything that's built in here for, building reserve, or like a line item that I didn't notice in here that, leads towards the ultimate replacement of the system?
Right. So we did pass the policy that the intention is that you would put 2% a year of the total cost, and that would help support the longer term replacement. Also, I think it's 32 or 37, the debt payment comes off, and then that will go directly into the reserve to start to build up the reserve for replacement. Okay. And so I think that's where our planning is. With the financial plan, it should also be addressing that as well. So I expect there to be an increase in the infrastructure side of the equation as well as the operational side.
Yeah, I was seeing it certainly with our neighbors to the east, without a noticeable line item for, to build that. They're, certainly seeing, what you need to do to get caught up. So, okay. I think it's worthwhile noting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor McConnell?
Thank you, Mayor Shankar. Matthew, we discussed a couple of times, I guess, rehabilitating one of the old tanks, for lack of a better word, lagoons. The ones that we have that have kind of questionable cement work in them could be addressed, and we still wouldn't lose production's the wrong word for sewage treatment plant, you know what I mean? Have we given any more thought to that?
Yep, so I was gonna bring it up under new business, but I can certainly bring it up now. The province has a fund for housing infrastructure. And part of that fund, it's $200 million for those municipalities that don't have a housing target, of which Prescott's one of them. And you can apply for projects that are either water or wastewater. So started kind of looking through that. They haven't released all of the details and the guidelines and things like that, but they did give a precursor of what it could potentially look like. And what I want to do is once we have that information is come back to the board and say, do we want to go after a project to add that fourth tank?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and I think we're in the kind of anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 million, depending on how much of the headworks that we have to do. When I talk about headworks, it's how you have the 3 tanks now and how all the piping comes in. It's when you add that fourth tank, what do we have to do to that piping to still get it through the plant and things like that. So that's certainly on the radar, and I think that would warrant a serious discussion of this board as well as the town of Prescott. And because I think for me, that is our number one impediment moving forward, and adding houses and industry beyond our borders is that the wastewater treatment plant. And I think that was borne out in the joint needs study. And certainly it would, I think, really be a great opportunity to access that funding. And I think it's either 75 or 80%. It's fairly lucrative. It could be 70 or 75%, but I can't quite remember. But certainly, for me, that's just a great opportunity to then add that fourth tank and then slowly be able to rehabilitate the concrete. Because I think when it was originally built, there was 2 things that were done. One, they removed the waterproofing from the concrete, the additive to make it waterproofing. And the second is that during construction, there was a period where it froze or when it was curing. So that would allow us to drain one of those tanks, put it in a new tank, rehabilitate it, and then continue that through the 3 tanks that are on site currently. So yeah, that was kind of the thinking, and I think it would be a great opportunity to add basically 1/3 more capacity, which then puts us into the 6,500 range, and move forward from that perspective.
Well, I don't have to ask, you're going to keep your eye on that and keep us advised if that type of thing comes to fruition.
To stand over Whisper Cardinal and say, this is what I'm thinking, and just before Christmas to say, this might be something that might be a good opportunity for all 3 of us to be able to invest in.
Yeah, certainly can voice our support behind that. I say that, the growth that we're going to see over the next decade is going to be exponential, and making sure the places that have water and sewer and understanding the pressure that they're going to be under to be able to service the population growth that we will see there's going to be a lot of pressure. So, trying to make sure that we're ready for that is great. So good forethought.
And with that, we might also talk about sewage station number 5, which is the last one before it leaves town and goes to Whisper Cardinal. And just if we have overflows, that's where we generally have it. Interesting thing, when they did the upgrade, let's say it's at least 6 to 10 years now, they actually put in smaller motors with less horsepower and less flow. Not quite sure what the thinking was behind that, but we have noticed that it does, if one's going to go into a bypass, it's that one. So it might be something at the same time that we address to also make sure that we eliminate bypass situations.
Good. I think it's great that we've already got Edwardsburg Cardinal at the table, but inviting Augusta along too with their potential that they're looking at and how we can help adapt for them. I think it's great to have them on board as well. All right, any other questions to this report?
Just a thought, it's probably a pretty silly question, but if we already know 5% is going to leave us with a deficit, shouldn't we?
Because of the surplus, I think.
So, yeah, so I think I can make the case easily for 10. I'm not sure how well the council wouldn't be so happy with the 10. And since we're going through that study anyways from the financial position, felt it was, it might be, instead of going 10 and then saying, turning around and saying, oh, we need another 10 or 15 next year, then it might be better to bridge the gap this year and then next year.
Okay.
I think too, if I may, the tax increase that we're gonna have this year because of St. Lawrence Lodge, unless you can, the fire is not gonna be overly happy, so keeping this to a minimum, I think is the thing to do.
Nothing.
And really, it's only, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's 15,000, right, on 1.2 million?
It ends up being, so 2.5%. So if you're budgeting 5%, because it's only halfway through the year, it ends up being 2.5%. So we're in the $28,000 range.
Gotcha.
And I think if I can, I think, easily with that unanticipated surplus this year, it'll certainly cover any of that overage for next year. And for the price increase that will have to happen next year, it'll have the backup of what the future needs is on that report. So you can justify, if it needs to be 10 next year, you'd be able to justify that 10 with solid data from that report. So,
Again, not quite just past.
there's two.
14?
Yeah. Plus 7 overall in taxes too.
Correct.
All right. I'm just going to call the question. All in favor? Eight is old business. Does anyone have any old business they'd like to bring forward?
Just one question, and I'll relate it back to old, only going back to the flow rate on page 7. Councillor McConnell asked a question about higher numbers, in infiltration or whatever. If that was, are these numbers not indicative of water infiltrating through cracks in pipes and things like that? I mean, through the thaw, like the higher numbers are in the wet seasons, the lower numbers are in the dry seasons?
So the interesting thing about Prescott is that everyone's sump pump in pretty much every area with the exception of new housing is attached to our sanitary system. So even when we redo a street, unless we want to force them to redo their internal plumbing, it goes out into their sanitary. And so while we have been splitting sanitary and storm between each other, that only takes into account what kind of flows on the road. So everyone's houses and, everything that goes into their sump pump, then it gets trafficked out to our sanitary. Some municipalities have made the hard choice and said you're going to have to redo your internal plumbing. That has its own set of realities and political ramifications. So we haven't, but we do have the opportunity to do that, then we make that take advantage of it. So there was a park building on Churchill Road East, and they were redoing their plumbing, and we said, okay, so we're going to now put your storm into the storm sewer. We took advantage of that, and when they were doing it at the same time. So and in all of our new developments, absolutely we do that. Any new houses split the two and go into the storm. So
Yeah, makes total sense. Good. Thanks for that answer.
Any other old business? All right, new business?
just the housing accelerator funding for infrastructure. And so we'll get more information on that. I'll be happy to send it out to the board. And if we think that that is something that that we would like to go after, then certainly more than happy to facilitate that.
I think that's a positive from all of us.
Is it Housing Accelerator or is it the provincial program?
The provincial program, it's
Different acronym, right?
Yeah, Housing Enabler Infrastructure Fund, something along those lines. but it's specific to water and wastewater infrastructure, so.
Okay.
We've got a grant for a while, so we'll do. All right, 10 is next meeting. Do we have a date for our next meeting?
So I think, I can work with this CAO grant, but if we get more information on the infrastructure grant, then I think we would call it at that time. Also, if it's closer to March, then we will have a good indication of exactly how much revenue we had. So I'm thinking sometime in the March, April timeframe, if everyone's comfortable with that, to just review the final numbers and then take a look at that information for the infrastructure grant, and then we would plan again sometime in September.
Okay.
And I'm away on the 14th of March, I think it is, March break week. I'm not available. No, Steve could sit in on my behalf, but.
Okay, no, that's great.
Ask a question before you adjourn. It's not exactly new business. It's not exactly old business. It's something that's been
Just
hanging
business.
around. It's kind of a sore point with every one of these boards that I've been on, going back to the time that we signed the original agreement with the Edwardsburg Cardinal. It hasn't been anything we've ever gone to war with, but it's just an annoying point that we provide the water for your industrial park. And as luck would have it, the water for our sewage treatment plant comes through your pipes. You charge us more than we charge you, which we don't think is quite fair and never have. Is there any way that you would have a look at this?
You're asking for tonight?
No,
Yeah, right now.
no.
I think as we move forward, Councillor McConnell, that Edwardsburg Cardinal quite understands and respects the fact of the situation that we're in and the goodwill that there is on both sides. And we're quite willing to pull our weight and do our part. So I'll let staff deal with the staff side of things, and I'll let the politicians deal with the politician side.
Yeah, okay, well, that's fine. It's just one of those things that has never seemed quite fair to anyone. Or that I've been on them ever since we've several years to sign, as you probably know. Anyway, something's beyond your radar.
Yeah, I trust in our staff that, you know, they don't need you and I debating those things at the table. The staff can sit and, you know, if there are things that need to be opened up, then they can address them with us and we can sit down and have conversations about them at that time. But of course, we are quite happy to pull our weight and we're quite happy to have the agreement that we have in place.
Thank you.
There you go. Item 11 is adjournment. Recommendation is that the wastewater treatment facility board of management be adjourned. Time is 6:04, moved by Councillor Kirkby, seconded by
It's too fast for me.
Mayor Dixon. All in favor?